March 21st, 1980, 10:47 p.m., Cuss Little Italy Restaurant, 1712 Snyder Avenue, South Philadelphia. Angelo Bruno, 69 years old, adjusts his glasses in the passenger seat of his Oldsmobile. He's returning from dinner, talking quietly with his driver John Stanfa about tomorrow's meetings. He mentions wanting to visit his grandchildren this weekend. He has no idea this is his last conversation. One shotgun blast. The driver's side window explodes. Double-aught buckshot tears through Bruno's skull at close range. Blood and brain matter spray across the dashboard, the headrest, the roof. He dies instantly, slumped against the door, his trademark fedora knocked to the floor covered in blood. If you're enjoying this deep dive into the story, hit the subscribe button and let us know in the comments from where in the world you are watching from today. The gunman walks away, calm, like he's heading home from work. John Stanfa, miraculously unhit, stumbles out screaming. Neighbors rush from row houses. They find the gentle Don dead in his car. The man who'd kept Philadelphia peaceful for 21 years, executed on a quiet South Philly street. This wasn't just another mob murder. This was the assassination that would trigger the most spectacular self-destruction in organized crime history. You think crime families are destroyed by law enforcement, by rival gangs, by federal prosecutions? This story will show you different. Sometimes the deadliest enemy is the ambition within your own ranks. Angelo Bruno had built the most stable crime empire in America. For 2 decades, he controlled an entire city through diplomacy, not violence. He made everyone rich while keeping everyone quiet. But someone had decided those old rules were holding back bigger profits. Here's what you need to understand. Bruno's murder wasn't committed by enemies. It was ordered by his most trusted lieutenant. The man who ate dinner at Bruno's house. The man who knew his schedule, his habits, his blind spots. The man Bruno had made rich beyond imagination. This is how the Philadelphia mob conquered a city, then obliterated itself in 8 years of betrayal, bombing, and bloodshed that would horrify even the New York families. The gentle Don. Angelo Bruno was born on May 21st, 1910, in Villalba, Sicily. But he wasn't your typical mob boss. When his family immigrated to South Philadelphia, young Angelo discovered he had a gift that would define his career. He could make enemies into partners. While other street kids were fighting over territory, Bruno was proposing profit-sharing agreements. When rival crews were shooting each other, Bruno was finding ways to split the money that kept everyone happy. He understood something most criminals never learned. Violence was expensive. Peace was profitable. By 1946, at just 36 years old, the commission officially recognized Bruno as boss of the Philadelphia crime family. His territory, all of Philadelphia, South Jersey, Delaware, and parts of Pennsylvania. But here's what made Bruno different. He ran his empire like Fortune 500 company. His loan sharking operations charged 1% weekly interest instead of the 3 to 5% demanded by New York families. Customers loved the reasonable terms. More importantly, they paid reliably because Bruno's collectors were trained in customer service, not brutality. His gambling operations were equally refined. Numbers, runners dressed professionally, maintained schedules, and most crucially, if you hit a number, you got paid immediately. No excuses, no delays. Bruno knew trust was the foundation of illegal gambling, but Bruno's masterpiece was Atlantic City. When New Jersey legalized casino gambling in 1976, Bruno was perfectly positioned. He'd been investing in the resort for decades. Restaurants, hotels, entertainment venues. When the casinos opened, his legitimate businesses provided perfect cover for money laundering. By 1980, Bruno's organization was pulling in an estimated $15 million annually from Atlantic City alone. That's $50 million in today's money, from one city. Here's what law enforcement privately admitted. Angelo Bruno's neighborhoods had lower crime rates than areas controlled by other families. His approach actually reduced violence while maximizing profits. But Bruno made two fatal mistakes. The betrayal. Antonio, Tony Bananas Caponegro, had been Bruno's most trusted underboss for 15 years. He controlled North Philadelphia and South Jersey. He was intelligent, ambitious, and increasingly frustrated by what he saw as Bruno's outdated thinking. The drug question was splitting the family. Bruno, like most old-school bosses, banned narcotics trafficking. Too risky, too much heat, too likely to bring federal prosecution. But Caponegro was watching New York families make fortunes from cocaine and heroin. Millions in monthly profits that Bruno was leaving on the table. In late 1979, Caponegro approached Bruno about relaxing the drug prohibition. Bruno's response was final. No drugs. Ever, anyone deals drugs gets killed. That conversation sealed Bruno's fate. Here's what FBI wiretaps later revealed. Caponegro reached out to the Genovese crime family in New York. His pitch was simple. Help me kill Angelo Bruno, and Philadelphia becomes a satellite of the Genoveses. We split the profits from expanded drug operations. Everyone gets rich. Frank Funzi Thierry, the Genovese boss, was interested. Philadelphia territory was valuable. Bruno's conservative approach left money on the table. A more aggressive boss could double the family's earning potential. But Caponegro made a catastrophic miscalculation. Commission rules required approval before killing a boss. You couldn't just execute a don without consensus from the other families. Caponegro either didn't understand this rule, or he thought he could get approval after the fact. He was dead wrong. March 21st, 1980. Caponegro arranged for Bruno to have dinner with associates at Coast Little Italy. Normal business meeting, nothing unusual. But Caponegro wasn't there when Bruno left. He had an alibi playing cards at a social club with a dozen witnesses. The shooter was waiting specifically for Bruno. One shotgun blast at close range. Professional execution. No robbery, no overkill. Just efficient elimination of the man standing between Caponegro and drug millions. Within hours, the Philadelphia underworld knew Angelo Bruno was dead. The man who'd kept peace for 21 years was gone. Caponegro expected to be named the new boss. He figured the commission would recognize his initiative. He was about to learn the difference between ambition and suicide. The commission's revenge. The commission was furious. Bruno had been a respected don who never caused problems for other families. His murder without approval violated the most basic rule of La Cosa Nostra. Someone had to pay, and that payment would be delivered in the most brutal way possible. 2 weeks after Bruno's assassination, on April 5th, 1980, Caponegro received a call. The Genovese family wanted to meet. They were ready to discuss his promotion to boss. Caponegro was ecstatic. His plan had worked. He drove to the Bronx with his brother-in-law, Alfred Salerno. They believed they were going to be congratulated. Instead, they were taken to a warehouse in the South Bronx for what would become one of the most brutal executions in mob history. Here's what the FBI crime scene report revealed. Caponegro was tortured for hours before being killed, beaten with baseball bats, shot multiple times in non-fatal areas, and finally executed with a shotgun blast to the head, the same method he'd used on Bruno. His body was stuffed in the trunk of a car and left in a parking lot. $20 bills were stuffed in his mouth and taped to his body. The message was unmistakable. He'd been killed for greed. Salerno's body was found separately, also tortured and shot. The commission had sent a signal that would echo through every crime family in America. Unauthorized hits on bosses would be punished with extreme brutality. But the damage to Philadelphia was irreversible. With Bruno dead and Caponegro eliminated, the family had no clear succession plan. Multiple capos believed they deserved to be boss. The careful structure Bruno had built over 21 years began fracturing immediately. And here's what made it worse. The FBI had been watching everything. The feds were listening. What the Philadelphia family didn't know was that the FBI had launched Operation Harvest in 1976, the most comprehensive investigation in the family's history. Wiretaps, surveillance, undercover operations. They'd been recording conversations, documenting meetings, building cases for 4 years. Bruno's murder was captured on multiple surveillance devices. The FBI knew about the Caponegro conspiracy almost as it happened. They had recordings of family members discussing the hit, planning the aftermath, and fighting over succession. The commission appointed Philip Testa as the new boss. Testa, known as Chicken Man for his poultry business, was 56, respected, and experienced. Under normal circumstances, he might have rebuilt the family, but these weren't normal circumstances. Federal prosecutors were preparing sweeping racketeering indictments. The family was under siege, just as younger members were demanding the drug profits that had motivated Bruno's murder. Philip Testa inherited a family that was simultaneously under federal investigation and internal rebellion. He lasted exactly 11 months. The nail bomb, March 15th, 1981, 2:54 a.m. Philip Testa returns to his row house at 2117 Porter Street, South Philadelphia. He'd been at a late meeting with capos, trying to manage the family's deteriorating situation. Multiple members were pushing for drug operations. The FBI pressure was intensifying. Everything Bruno had built was falling apart. Testa parks his Cadillac, walks up his front steps, tired, stressed, focused on tomorrow's problems. He puts his key in the lock of his front door. The explosion destroys the entire front of the house. A nail bomb placed under the front porch detonates the moment Testa opens the door. The blast kills him instantly and throws his body 30 feet into the street. Windows shatter for 3 blocks. The explosion is heard throughout South Philadelphia. Police find nails, screws, and metal fragments embedded in houses across the street. Testa's body is mangled beyond recognition. The medical examiner identifies him through dental records. Neighbors describe the scene as like a war zone. If you find this story engaging, please take a moment to subscribe and enable notifications. It helps us continue producing in-depth content like this. Here's what the FBI discovered within 48 hours. The bomb was planted by Salvatore Testa, Philip's own son, working with Capo Peter Casella and Soldier Raymond Long John Martirano. They'd placed the device while Philip was at his meeting. Salvatore Testa had murdered his own father to take control of the family. But there was something even more disturbing. The bombing had been approved by elements within the family who believed Philip Testa was too conservative, too much like Bruno. They wanted aggressive leadership that would maximize drug profits. A son killing his father to run drug operations showed how completely the family's discipline had collapsed. The organization that Bruno had built on respect and tradition was now operating on pure greed and violence. The commission was horrified. 2 Philadelphia bosses murdered in 11 months, both hits unauthorized. Both violations of fundamental Mafia law. The Philadelphia family was becoming a liability to organized crime nationally. But instead of learning from these disasters, the family made an even worse choice for the next boss. Nicodemo, little Nicky Scarfo, was everything Angelo Bruno wasn't. Where Bruno was diplomatic, Scarfo was violent. Where Bruno avoided attention, Scarfo craved fear. Where Bruno built consensus, Scarfo ruled through terror. At 5'5" and 51 years old, Scarfo had spent nearly 2 decades in exile in Atlantic City after killing a man in a bar fight. He was small, vicious, and had spent 20 years nursing grudges against the Philadelphia family leadership. If Bruno's philosophy was peace is profitable, Scarfo's was simpler. Fear equals respect. Kill anyone who disrespects you. Kill anyone who might become a threat. Kill anyone who looks at you wrong. The commission appointed Scarfo boss in late 1981. It was the worst decision in the family's history. Scarfo's first order of business was consolidating power through murder. He promoted loyalists, eliminated rivals, and made it clear that questioning his authority meant death. Even Salvatore Testa, despite having killed his own father to prove loyalty, wasn't trusted. On September 14, 1984, Salvatore Testa was lured to a meeting at a South Philadelphia restaurant. He believed he was being promoted to underboss. Instead, he was shot 6 times by 3 of Scarfo's most trusted killers. His body was found in a lot near the Italian market. He was 31 years old. That murder established Scarfo's reputation throughout the underworld. If he killed the son of a former boss, a young man who committed patricide to prove loyalty, he'd kill anyone. But here's what Scarfo didn't understand. Bruno's success came from making people want to cooperate. Scarfo's approach made people afraid to speak honestly, afraid to disagree with orders, afraid to report problems. This fear paralyzed decision-making, just as the family faced its greatest crisis. FBI prosecutions were accelerating. Electronic surveillance was capturing evidence of ongoing crimes. The family needed careful, strategic leadership. Instead, they had a boss who solved every problem with murder. The killing spree, between 1981 and 1987, the Scarfo family committed an estimated 35 murders. Compare that to the Bruno era, 21 years, approximately 12 murders, most carefully planned business decisions. Scarfo was killing impulsively, publicly, without clear strategic justification. Family members were murdered for minor disrespect. Associates were killed based on rumors. The violence spiraled completely out of control. Here are just some of the victims. Pat the Cat Spirito, killed for making jokes about Scarfo's height. Frankie Flowers D'Alfonso, murdered for complaining about his cut of profits. Pasquale Patty Specs Martirano, shot for being late to a meeting. Vincent Falcone, killed because someone thought he looked suspicious. The murders attracted exactly the attention Bruno had always avoided. Local media covered every killing. Federal investigators expanded operations. Other crime families began distancing themselves from Philadelphia, viewing Scarfo's organization as unstable and dangerous. Meanwhile, the drug trafficking that had motivated the original plot against Bruno was generating enormous profits, but also enormous federal crimes. Scarfo's crews were moving cocaine, heroin, and methamphetamines throughout the mid-Atlantic. They were making millions monthly. They were also creating hundreds of federal violations that could be prosecuted under the RICO Act. The FBI's case was building systematically. Operation Harvest had evolved into multiple investigations. Wiretaps were recording murders being planned and executed. Surveillance was documenting drug deals, money laundering, corruption, but the most devastating blow would come from within. The rat, Thomas Del Giorno, was one of Scarfo's most trusted capos. He had participated in multiple murders, run major drug operations, managed the family's loan sharking network. He was a made man with 15 years of loyalty to the organization. In 1986, Del Giorno was facing federal charges that would send him to prison for life. Multiple murders, drug trafficking, racketeering. The evidence was overwhelming, but Del Giorno had something federal prosecutors desperately wanted: detailed knowledge of every major crime the family had committed under Scarfo's leadership. In early 1987, Del Giorno made a decision that would finish what Bruno's assassination had started. He agreed to cooperate with federal prosecutors. Del Giorno's betrayal was catastrophic for the family. He could testify about specific murders, who ordered them, who carried them out, where bodies were buried. He could explain drug operation suppliers, distributors, profit margins. He could identify corrupt officials, politicians, judges, police officers on the payroll. Most importantly, Del Giorno could place Nicky Scarfo at the center of a criminal enterprise that included over 100 murders and millions in drug profits. The trial began in 1988, United States v. Scarfo and others. For 6 weeks, Del Giorno sat on the witness stand and systematically destroyed the organization he'd helped build. He described the Philip Testa bombing in horrific detail. He explained how Salvatore Testa was lured to his death. He testified about drug operations, murder contracts, the climate of fear that paralyzed the family. Defense attorneys tried to discredit him, but Del Giorno had dates, locations, corroborating evidence. The jury heard about a crime family that had evolved from Bruno's disciplined business organization into a chaotic murder machine that routinely killed its own members. The verdict: on November 19, 1988, Nicky Scarfo was convicted on multiple RICO charges, including conspiracy to commit murder, drug trafficking, extortion, and corruption. The judge sentenced him to 55 years in federal prison. He was 59 years old. He would die behind bars. 17 other family members were convicted in the same trial. The Philadelphia mob's entire leadership was eliminated in a single prosecution. The organization that Angelo Bruno had built over 5 decades was destroyed in less than 8 years of self-inflicted chaos. But even then, the destruction wasn't finished. The final collapse. With Scarfo in prison, the remaining members fought over what was left. John Stanfa, Bruno's former driver, who'd survived the 1980 assassination, claimed leadership. Joseph "Skinny" Joey Merlino, representing younger members, disputed Stanfa's authority. The result was a war that lasted through the 1990 seconds. Stanfa's crew versus Merlino's crew. More murders, more prosecutions, more convictions. By 2000, the Philadelphia family had been reduced to fewer than 30 members, compared to over 200 during Bruno's era. Today, the Philadelphia mob is essentially extinct. They control no legitimate businesses, no unions, no significant criminal enterprises. They're a handful of aging criminals running small-scale operations that barely qualify as organized crime. The neighborhoods that once respected Angelo Bruno now barely remember the mob existed. South Philadelphia has been gentrified. The row houses where bosses lived are owned by young professionals. The social clubs where business was conducted are coffee shops and yoga studios. The lesson: walk through South Philadelphia today, and you'll see no trace of the organization that once controlled an entire city. Angelo Bruno's row house on Broad Street still stands, but it's occupied by a family with no idea of its history. The restaurant where he had his final dinner is now a parking lot. What destroyed the Philadelphia mob wasn't law enforcement. It wasn't rival families. It wasn't federal prosecutions. It was ambition without discipline. It was violence without strategy. It was the systematic abandonment of every principle that had made the family successful. Bruno built an empire through patience, planning, and partnerships that benefited everyone. His successors destroyed it through greed, paranoia, and betrayal that benefited no one. The Philadelphia family took over a city in 5 decades. Then, it obliterated itself in 8 years of self-destruction that stands as the most spectacular organizational collapse in organized crime history. Angelo Bruno died in his car on a quiet South Philly street. His empire died with him, victim of the same violence he'd spent his career avoiding. The most stable crime family in America was destroyed not by enemies, but by the people Bruno had trusted most. That's the real story of organized crime. Not honor and loyalty, but businesses that succeed through discipline and fail through chaos. The Philadelphia mob had both, and chaos ultimately won. If you found this story fascinating, hit subscribe. We drop a new mob documentary every week. Drop a comment. Which crime families rise and fall should we cover next? This is Mafia Talks, where the truth about organized crime is always more brutal than the legend.